Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Works, Executive Director of the Board Retailers Association. For those of you that are not aware, the Board Retailers Association is a nonprofit trade organization. We help our independent specialty retail members to lower cost and increase margins and create more remarkable customer experiences. Basically, we help independent specialty retailers to survive and thrive in business. With me today is Dan Jablons of Retail Smart Guys. He's the president of Retail Smart Guys. He provides tremendous consulting, tremendous resources for our members. He's also on our advisory board. He's participated in a ton of Board Retailers Association learning labs over the years at Surf Expo and elsewhere. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Doug. It's great to be here, and always fun to spend time with the Board Retailers Association. You know, I'm a big fan, big believer in what you guys do, and independent retail can feel like a very lonely thing. But the truth of the matter is, um, you know, there's lots of resources out there for independent retailers, like the Board Retailer Association, and we'll talk more about this, but participating in that and taking advantage of that is an amazing, amazing thing, and something we absolutely believe in. And there are so many vendors that align with the Board Retailers Association. So when you become a member, I mean, so many things that you're already buying now, so many things that you're already using for your business now, or should be, is available to you through the Board Retailers Association at amazing prices and stuff like that. So, it's a slam dunk. You got to do that for sure. But I'm thrilled to be here today. And Doug and I have been talking about, doing more of these educational webinars for independent retail, because we're going into kind of an interesting moment in history here with between where things are going to go economically, where things are going to go politically, where things are going to go in terms of different stores, different vendors, and stuff like that. It's everything's sort of in motion, but that's been true about retail since the very beginning of time. So, I think it's important that we continue to educate, we continue to talk about what's going on out there, and we continue to share the things that successful retailers are doing across multiple industries, so that we can all thrive and survive and do well, like you said, Doug. So there you go. All right. With that, I think I'm just going to jump right in. So let me share my screen here. All right, here we go. So 3 tweaks to improve cash flow. Just 3 simple little tweaks of stuff that you can do to actually improve your cash flow and improve the profitability of your business. And also, by doing that, you're going to improve a lot of things. You're going to improve things for yourself. You're going to improve things for your customers. They're going to have a better experience. So it all kind of lines up. There's a tremendous synergy in everything that happens in retail. Okay. Of course, I got to do a little introduction of myself just so you know who I am. Doug introduced me really beautifully before that. So just to sort of clarify a been in retail for a little more than 40 years, and Retail Smart Guys is my company. We specialize in things like cash flow. We specialize in merchandise planning and open to buy planning. I can tell you this, I was in the point of sale industry for a number of years before I did what I'm doing right now. I thought I understood what made really profitable retailers, but when I got into planning, I actually understood where the money comes from, and we're going to talk about some of that here in a few minutes. But the idea of being able to cash flow and plan the business properly is really the mainstay of what we do. That said, I live in Los Angeles, and I believe it is law in Los Angeles that 1 out of 3 people has to say that they're an actor. But I actually get to do some of that. Here's some pictures of me. I was in a movie called The Outlaws. There's a picture of me with Larry David. I was his lawyer on Curb Your Enthusiasm. And then there's a picture of me with Ernie Hudson. I played an evil doctor giving him electric shock treatments on a show called The Family Business, which he took quite well, believe it or not. So anyway, but there you go. So that's a little bit about me. But today we're going to talk really about cash flow management and merchandising and planning your business a little bit better. Okay. So the basis of this webinar is from a book called Acres of Diamond by Russell Conwell. It's an old book, but he says in business, you want to dig in your own backyard to find those diamonds. And a lot of times when I talk to retailers, I hear them talk about, like, I say, well, where's your growth going to come from? Well, we're going to open another location, or we're going to get a killer new sales rep, or we're going to get another line in, or something like that, right? Notice that all of those are external to the business. None of them are internal. And everything I'm going to talk about today is stuff that's internal and doable inside the business you have today. And that's what, Russell Conwell was talking about when he talks about digging in your own backyard for those diamonds. I'm going to show you what some of those diamonds are so you don't have to dig up the whole backyard. Okay? All right, here we go. So, what I'm going to show you also is not theory. These are actual examples from stores that we're working with. It's their numbers, it's their results, and these are all results that are doable for every one of you who is listening to this webinar today. Okay? So, a couple of things we got to do. Got to be willing to do a few things. First thing got to be willing to do is look at some stats, look at some metrics, right? If you don't measure, you can't improve. I'm not sure who said that first, but it's a really true thing. You can't figure out if you've improved any if you're not measuring your improvements along the way. So we got to start looking at some stats. We got to start figuring out what stats we're going to look at and how we're going to improve those stats, okay? Also got to be willing to change, right? If you do what you've always done, you will get less. It used to be if you do what you've always done, you'll get the same or less. It's proven to be true that really, if you do what you've always done, you're going to get less because we are in an ever-evolving, ever-changing marketplace, right? We're on the bleeding edge of capitalism. And so we've got to be prepared to change and modify what we do with our customers and stuff like that. We also have to be willing to act, make a decision, and it's actually better to make a decision and fail than not to make a decision at all, right? And failure itself is not the end game. It just means, okay, that didn't go so well. We're going to lick our wounds and go back to the next thing. So you got to be willing to do all those things to make some changes in the business that are going to create more profitability and more cash flow for your store.
In skateboarding, failure is actually the path to success.
Of course, right? No one gets on a skateboard and never falls, right, Doug? I mean, that doesn't happen.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that's
You either land or you learn.
right.
Whenever I teach skateboarding, for example, I always press them, well, try again, make an adjustment, try again.
There you go. And that's not any different than what we're talking about here in retailing. So, all right, this slide is all about some financial stuff, and it's more complicated than it needs to be. Frankly, all it really trying to say in this whole square is that you have two kinds of expenses. You have fixed and you have variable expenses. Okay, fixed expenses don't change; they're the same every single month, and variable expenses change with how much business you do, right? Store supplies is a great example of a variable expense. It's only based upon how much you sell, how many bags you have to give out, and that sort of thing, right? Typically, rent is a fixed expense, right? The rent is the same every single month. Okay, so we're going to start looking at some variable expenses here, and the one I want to look at most carefully is our selling expense. Okay, so first let me figure out how to calculate selling cost. Okay, selling cost or selling expense is payroll divided by net revenue. Okay, so like this slide says, I've got an employee, I paid them $1,700 in the month of January. Okay, that same employee, okay, sold $12,500 of merchandise. So if I take what I paid them divided by what they sold, that means his selling cost was 13.6%. Okay, you want to measure this by your associate, by the store, and weekly, monthly, and annually. Now, some of you are saying, well, I don't really keep that I don't have all my employees clock in. I don't have my sales by employee. I'm a big advocate of that, not because I'm trying to punish them, but because how can when we talk about things like, measuring things, if Doug and I are both salespeople in your store, right? How can you tell which of us is really doing a better job if you don't have stats to look at for each of us? If you can't tell my units per transaction versus Doug's units per transaction. If I can't tell Doug's average sale versus my average sale. And also, if we can't tell my selling cost versus Doug's selling cost, right? And the point of all that is, if I've got a 2.1 units per transaction and Doug has a 2.7 unit per transaction, well, I got to figure out what Doug is doing so I get my units per transaction up that high. But you, as the owner of the business, are never going to figure out that Doug is at a 2.7 and I'm at a 2.1 unless you enter that separately. And therefore, you can't train me or hope that I'm going to do better. Right? So that improvement comes from measuring that. Okay? Now, back to this thing, though. So $1,700 divided by 12.5 is 13.6%. That's a bit high. That makes more sense on the coastal areas, California, New York, Florida, that kind of stuff. it's a little bit, that's kind of where that number really kind of falls into place. In the middle of the country, it's more like 9 or 10, sometimes 11, depending on the city, that kind of thing. Okay. So you start to measure that and look at that. Okay. Now, look at a real life example here. Here's a store. Their total expenses, both fixed and variable, were 42% of their sales. Okay. You know that, by the way, by grabbing a profit and loss statement from your accounting system, you take the total expenses at the bottom line there, you divide that into your net sales, and that's your expenses as a percentage of sales. Okay. So 42% were his expenses. 23% of that was fixed expenses, rent and stuff like that doesn't change. 19% was variable, and selling payroll was 12%. So we said, okay, what if I could lower the selling payroll expense by just 2%? Okay. I'm not looking to fire the whole staff and hire a bunch of brand new people. I'm not trying to fire everybody. I'm not trying to throw everybody out. I'm not trying to cut your staff. Just reduce it by 2%. Maybe get a little smarter on how we schedule things, right? Can encourage people to sell a little bit more. Just tweak it by 2%. Okay. Watch what happens when you do that. Okay. If the store's doing about 750, our fixed expenses are 172, our variable is 142, so our profit before cost of goods was $435,000. Okay? So, if I don't sell another piece and my fixed expenses don't change, because why? They're fixed expenses, right? So those two don't change, but I just lower my variable by that 2% on the selling cost that we were talking about. My profit before cost of goods goes from 435 to 450, and I pick up $15,000 or 3.4% on a business doing $750,000 a year. I get $15,000 more cash without selling another piece. Right? Now, when you tell me I want to remodel the store, when you tell me I wish I had more money for marketing, when you tell me I wish I could hire another guy, when you tell me my kid is going to go to college next year and I'm worried about paying for it, when you tell me you want to go on a better vacation, but you don't have the money, well, I just found 15,000 of it right there. And that's if you're doing 750. If you're doing a million, it's a bigger number, right? So it's just by getting smarter about that, finding 2%, right? First, you got to measure it. What is it? Then how can I get that to be a little bit better? Maybe it's 1% per employee or something like that. You know what I mean? You whittle away at it, you whittle away at it, you whittle away at it, and you will find you pick up some cash right there. Kind of crazy, right? But there it is, okay? That's a diamond in your backyard. That's not you going outside. That's not you finding another line, another salesperson, another location. That's you tweaking what you already have. Okay? Now, one of our stores did even more than that. Okay? So they told the store manager, I'll give you a bonus if you also increase revenue by 5%. Okay? Now, that's not a huge goal, by the way. Increasing revenue by 5%, not a crazy number. And we're going to have to find ways to do that, going forward for sure. Right? But let's see what happens as a result of that. So first two columns you've already seen. Okay. Now column 3, there's that 5% increase in revenue. Okay. Fixed expenses stayed the same. Why? Because they're fixed expenses, right? They don't move. Variable expenses went from 142 down to 127, but then went up to 133 because my revenue went up. Okay. Even with that though, my profit before cost of goods is 481. I pick up $46,000 by getting a 5% increase paired with a 2% decrease in selling costs. Now we're talking about some serious money, right? When I do this presentation at trade shows, I go, you know what? If you got that put in place, you could have a better dinner tonight. You probably stayed at a nicer hotel, right? Any of those things. But that's where this money is. Again, all internal, all internal. It's a great first tweak, and it's all diamonds in your backyard. Okay? So homework for you guys on this one. Figure out what your selling cost is by employee. Okay? Figure out how you can get 2% better at that. Roll that out. Okay? And certainly, if you're doing it and you're stuck on stuff and you have questions, That's what the Board Retailers Association is here for. If you reach out to us, Doug will connect you to me, and we'll figure it out together. Okay, that's what we're here to do. Okay, okay, that's the first one. Okay, boom. Okay, now the second one is markdowns. Markdowns, one of your top three expenses, right? Between payroll, markdowns, and rent, those are the top three. Okay, not inventory, right? Inventory is obviously your biggest expense, but anything that's a non-inventory expense, it's in the top three for sure. And understanding markdowns is kind of critical to the whole thing, right? Look at this example, different store, around the same volume. All the examples I kind of came up with here were stores around the same volume, so it would be scalable, would make sense, right? So a store doing around $749, they were taking 21% markdowns, okay, or spending $157,000 in markdowns across a year. Their gross profit, 45.5%, generating $341,000 in cash. Okay. And we go, okay, what if I could improve the markdowns by just 2%? You'll see that the 2% is a common theme in this little presentation, right? If I do that, my markdowns go from 157 to 142. I pick up a full point in gross margin. I pick up 74.87 in cash. Now, that's just by trying to mitigate my markdowns by 2%. And it would be very fair for any of you to say, oh, good tip, Dan. Just reduce my markdowns. Thanks for that genius idea, right? But look, it's not about just like, okay, well, how do I slash it, right? Because if you think about markdowns, you got to think about what causes them to remove them, right? And so look at this list. These are just some common lists of what causes a markdown, right? Getting the goods late, overbuying, bad buyings, your assortment is too broad, okay? You don't react fast enough. Your salespeople don't get it. But you could really look at this list and break it up into two groups. There are markdowns that happen on the buying side, and there are markdowns that happen on the selling side, right? On the buying side, it's that, yeah, the goods came in too late, or I bought the wrong goods, or I didn't have a good enough assortment, or I went to the same vendor too many times and my customer got bored, stuff like that, okay? Um, Wrong price points. There's a lot of things you can figure out with that, right? On the selling side, it's the people on the floor don't know why that stuff is there. They don't know how to sell it. They don't have enough product knowledge. They don't engage enough with the customer with enough knowledge of that product to get them to buy the merchandise, right? And sometimes, especially in the surf and skate industry, I've seen it where a buyer brings in a brand and the guys on the floor don't support it, don't like the brand, right? And then it becomes like, dude, I'm not selling that, right? You have to navigate that one, I mean, I sometimes have had to tell salespeople, dude, if you don't like this brand, you at least got to get me out of it so I have the money to buy the brand you want me to buy, right? Because inventory is neither wine nor cheese and doesn't get better with age. And so if I don't get my cash out of this thing, I can't buy what you want me to buy, okay? All that said, the key is to identify what's causing your markdowns. And once you've identified that, then taking the steps to mitigate those markdowns. But if you take nothing else away from this webinar, and I hope you take a lot away from it, but if you take nothing else away from it, the bottom line here in red is one of the most important things I can tell you, right? Every time you sell an extra item, you avoid a future markdown. If you could get that culture instilled in your sales staff, every time they sell an extra item, we avoid a future markdown, I'm going to make you money right there. That's why we like to measure units per transaction, average dollar sale, right? I want them, someone comes across your threshold and they're buying stuff, right? Your salespeople need to be engaging with them. I'm going to give you a quote from Harry Friedman, who used to say, you show till they say no, 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 right? Good salespeople are not like trying to twist your arm off. Come on, man, buy this board. Come on, man, buy the board. Buy the board. Come on, man, you should buy the board. It's not that. It's like, did you see all these boards? Did you see this one? Did you see that one? This one's pretty cool. By the way, if you're replacing your board, you got to look at these wheels. You got to look at these trucks. You got to consider the performance of all those things, right? You got to get some, whatever all the things are you're going to do with that, right? Now you got a cool board. You're not going to go out there with that hat, are you? You know what I mean? Like there's lots you can say to add on there, and I could talk about that for days. Maybe Doug will do that as another webinar one day. But
Sure, upselling tools, everything else, cross-selling.
yeah. We should hit that one hard. But every time they sell an extra item, they avoid a future markdown. Okay, you could put that one up on your wall. It's a big one. So there you go. Okay. All right. And then the third tweak, the one that's nearest and dearest to my heart, has to do with purchases. Okay. Now, you have inventory is your biggest expense. Okay. It's also your biggest asset, by the way. But you spend more on inventory than anything else, more than rent, more than people, more than technology, more than marketing, more than utilities, more than anything, right? So manicuring and curating that assortment is key to the success of your store, right? And there is no better marketing for a retail store than having the right goods, right? If someone comes to your store and you don't have the right merchandise, imagine the level of marketing it would take to get them to come back again. If they've been there and went, yeah, that store's not for me. Wrong price point. They don't have stuff I like, blah, 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 that kind of thing. What would it take to get them to come back again? A lot, right? So we got to make sure that um, we have the right assortments all the time, and we're constantly manicuring it, curating it, making sure it's right, tweaking it. And that means trying some new stuff and let it, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, get out quickly and get into something else, right? Now, check this out. Okay, here's a store doing it again in that same ballpark in the 750 range. This store was doing a little more than 751,000, right? Their purchases were 55% of their sales, or $413,000. Okay, we said again, what if I could reduce that by just 2%? That's all, just 2%. If I do that, my purchases go from 413 down to 398. Okay, my available cash becomes 353, and I get $15,000 more cash as a result of doing that, right? So check that out. There's another $15,000. So we did, I mean, look at the amount of money that we're stacking up here for you. Okay, it's just by reducing purchases. Now that said, okay, you don't just cut 2% off of every purchase, right? You can't turn to a t-shirt vendor and say, ship me 11, not 12. Doesn't work that way, right? You got to figure out by class of merchandise in your store, which ones are growing and need to be fed, okay? Which ones are shrinking and need to go away, okay? Or need to at least be reduced to a proper size. Which ones are in maintenance mode and we just need to keep that chugging, right? Which ones are complementary to each other, so as I grow one, I can grow the other, right? There's a lot of looking at that. But if you just go and cut straight across the whole thing, okay, and just cut 2%, you're likely to destroy the business, okay? Because you're not feeding the things where things are going well. I actually just today was talking to someone who added a sunglass line, and it's just killing right now. They're killing it with sunglasses, right? I need to feed that class now. I need to continue to feed it more inventory. I need to push that one. I need to make sure there's not an empty space in the sunglass shelf there, right? They got other categories that aren't doing so well, so we're trimming the inventory back there. We're getting out of those goods, taking those dollars, feeding the sunglass dollars, right? That's how we keep the store churning. We keep the turns happening fast. We keep it profitable. Okay. Now, how do you do that? Well, you got to start with a good sales forecast. Okay. A good sales forecast is not last year plus or minus a certain percentage. A lot of you guys are just taking the forecast you got from your accountant, your CPA, and then you forget about it until you see them again a year later. Okay. That's not the way to forecast. You forecast by category, by location if you have multiple locations, and by month. And here's the other thing, and we do this all the time. You got to look at it and go, was I right? And if not, we have to adjust, right? Do I have the right idea? Is it trending in the right direction? This is starting to really do well. It's trending up. I need to beef up my forecast. I need to buy to that. This one's not doing so well. I got to cut back a little bit. I got to figure out what I'm not doing right here, or is it not doing well because I bought the wrong stuff? Let me get out of that, get into the next stuff, right? So we got to forecast properly, monitor it, make sure we're right, and not just look at what you do, but also look at where the industry is going, by the way, which is, again, why it's important to be connected with the Board Retailers Association, okay? And with my friends at TrackPly. You're going to hear more about them soon, but and us, because we're doing some stuff together. But it's got to include some industry trends, right? I had one store, not in this industry at all, but it was a women's clothing store, and she wasn't buying dresses. I'm like, why aren't you buying dresses? And she's like, my sales staff says we can't sell them. I'm like, okay, how about we go out and buy some dresses and not listen to them, and let's just do it, right? She goes out, and I give her an open to buy. I give her a budget of about $10,000. Turned out to be the third best class in her store, right? Just because she bought into something she wasn't used to buying, right? But we found that little niche, that diamond in her backyard, right? So after you do a good sales forecast, you got to plan the inventory. And the key to that is the stock to sales ratio. You want to have a high stock to sales ratio, right? More inventory at the start of the season, right? Beginning of summer, you want to have, or beginning or spring, you want to have a great inventory assortment so that the guys come into your store, look at it and go like, oh, these guys have everything. I want to make sure that when I need stuff, I come back here, right? When you get to the end, you want to have a low stock to sales ratio. I'm getting out, I'm cashing out of all that stuff, right? So that I have the dollars in place to buy next season and churn that all over again, right? I mean, right now, as we record this, we're getting close to holiday. And one of the things that we're talking to all of our retailers about right now is, okay, where are we going to end the year, right? Why is that important? Because it affects your taxes. So we're trying to help people not spend a lot of money on taxes as a result. Okay? All right. Here is a slide that is my life story right here in one slide. This is my entire life in one slide. Okay? Let's say you have a store and you were doing $1 million. Okay? You're turning your inventory 2.5 times a year. Based on average margins in the surf and skate industry, it means your average inventory is $240,000. Okay? If I got you to improve that by a half turn, you don't sell another piece. You just go from a 2.5 turn to a 3 turn. Your average inventory drops from 240 to 199, and you put $41,000 in your pocket just by turning faster. That's not by having to have some amazing hypnotic TikTok video, the most incredible Instagram post known to mankind, the most the Jedi salesman of all Jedi salesmen, right? The best line ever invented in the industry. It's just by getting the inventories a little bit tighter. Okay? This, as a retailer, is job number one. You do this, you're going to have the money to do all the other things you want to do, right? So, a couple more things I'll tell you just quickly about this. That you get there by running more reports than just sales reports. So many times I talk to retailers and they're like, I run a bestseller and I look at the top two. No, look at the fifth one. Look at the sixth one. That's where the opportunity is, sleeping and ready to do something in your store. Okay? You want to look at your sales versus receipt of goods, which will get you to look at cash margin. Cash margin is sales at retail minus receiving at cost. Okay? That's the actual net change to your bank account. Your point of sale system will tell you if you bought something for 10 bucks and sold it for 20, your margin is 50%. And that is true. But what if you sold one, but you bought 30? From a cash perspective, you'd be upside down. We look at cash margin for that exact reason. Okay? All right. So, and we can help you put together a thing called the vendor scorecard that would help you understand that one. Okay? Point number 4, figure out you have old inventory that can become cash. You know what? Old inventory is not your friend. If your customer comes in this month and sees what they saw last month, they're not coming next month. You got to constantly do things to surprise them and interest them and get them going. Okay? And the last one is one of my favorites. I kind of developed it while we were in the middle of the recession when I first started Retail Smart Guys, which is that expense control is important, absolutely. But it's not a long-term strategy for growth. Merchandise planning and doing some of the things that we talked about here, mitigating markdowns, driving your salespeople, is how you grow a business. Do you ever notice, if you read any kind of publication from any kind of, any business publication, and they're talking about some company that's really doing great, right? Who do they talk to? It's not the controller saying I saved 8% on shipping, right? Who they are talking to, they're talking to the guy who figured out, how to drive product, why their product is working, why it resonated with their customer, how they got the message out, how they're selling it, how they're delivering it, what the success in the marketplace is, right? Those are all strategies for growth. Okay, so if I recap what we did here, by improving our selling costs by just 2%, we picked up 15 grand. I improved my markdowns by 2%, picked up 7,500. I did better in purchases by 2%. There's another 15 grand, which means all told, cash and prizes with these three things is a little more than $37,000 on a business doing $750,000 a year. All internal to the business, all diamonds in your own backyard. Now, you can tell me, well, I'm already looking at the markdowns really carefully, you know? Okay, good. So you're already doing that one, but maybe you're not doing the other two. Okay. And these are just three of a bunch that we use to sort of help retailers. But, this is everything. So, you know what? This is the key to driving successful retail today. Okay. All right. I'm going to leave you with these two quick quotes. Okay. Very fast. This first one is from Ben Franklin. It's the foreword in Poor Richard's Almanac, which we used to read in school, right? A million years ago. In the foreword of Poor Richard's Almanac, which takes place in the 1700s. Crazy as that sounds, 1700s, right? All the retailers in the village are in the square and they're freaking out because we're going to get taxed. We got more taxes coming. Okay? And so they turn to Father Abraham, the old man of the village, and they go, Father Abraham, you've been in retail for forever and ever. Oh my goodness. What do we do about all these taxes? And Father Abraham says we are taxed twice as much by our idleness, 3 times as much by our pride, and 4 times as much by our folly. What does he mean? So we're taxed twice as much by doing nothing, 3 times by being proud and not actually admitting what we're not doing well, and 4 times by our folly, which means we just sort of set this idea in mind and don't really look and don't really think about where we're going. Okay? As true as that was in the 1700s, it's probably doubly true today. Okay? And the last one is from Peter Drucker, all good ideas degenerate into work. What does that mean? It just simply means that if you like the things that we're talking about here today, you're going to have to do some work. You have to study it a little bit, and we're here to help you with that, obviously. These things don't just happen. People say things like, "Oh my God, that dude's got a 50,000 name mailing list. I wish I had that." Well, he didn't start on day one with a 50,000 name mailing list. He got them 10 a day for a while, right? So you got to keep working at this. Retail is detail. It's the sum of doing a lot of things correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I'm going to skip this slide for a minute. But, if you'd like, by the way, as a member of the Board Retailers Association, or if you become a member of the Board Retailers Association, and for sitting through this webinar, if you would like, you get a free hour with me. Okay. We'll look at your business. We'll study it and figure out what's working. What departments are you underperforming in? Where can we get more cash? Is your expense structure right? How do we figure out how to get all this to happen? So right there is my cell phone, and right there is my email address. I don't go to bed at night unless my inbox is empty, much to the chagrin of my wife. But I figure if you write to me, you're not looking for a new chocolate chip cookie recipe, right? You write to me because there's something going on with the business, and I want to make sure that we communicate quickly and fast. Okay? So that's what I wanted to present today, Doug. I hope it was helpful to everybody, and I hope they get excited by it. So there you go. And this is the first of many that we're going to do. And I guess this is a good time for us to announce another initiative that we're talking about, right?
Absolutely. Dan, we were talking about another way for shops to take advantage of the Board Retailers Association Distinguished Retail Membership. That's the $100 a year membership that includes the shipping discount and a number of additional robust benefits that are basically relevant and helpful to your business. Connections, lower cost, all kinds of different things along those lines, lower minimums on a lot of private label, things along those lines. And so we came up with this scholarship program. Dan, you want to elaborate on the scholarship program?
Well, sure. If you, and correct me if I say it wrong, Doug, if you sign up with us, okay, and you allow us to plan your business and work with you on that, which by the way will cost you, if you're going, well, what's that going to be, right? First off, we won't do it unless there's at least a 3 times ROI investment that we can see. And usually it runs, right around 1% of sales on an annualized basis, right? So it's not unaffordable. But if you sign up with us, we will pay for your membership to the Board Retailers Association. I mean,
For an
it's a
entire
win-win
year.
for an
It's
entire
for an
year.
entire year.
It's a
And we,
super win for you as a retailer. You're going to get great planning from us and our team. You're going to get all the benefits from being a member of the Board Retailers Association. So, man, there's just no reason not to do it. I mean, I'm just a huge believer in the Board Retailers Association. I obviously believe in the things I've mentioned to you in this webinar. I think you can probably sense that. So I hope you take advantage of that. Certainly contact the Board Retailers Association, and they'll get you all set up and ready to go on that.
Yep. We call it the Smart Retailer Scholarship from Retail Smart Guys. And you can contact me, Doug, at boardretailers.org, or send me a text message or call me 760-500-5716.
There you go. Well, this is the first of many that we're going to do. We're excited to bring you more educational content and make that all work. So we're happy about all that, and certainly want to uh, help every retailer we can make things better for you, get you more cash flow, more profitability. And I want to thank you, Doug and George, and everybody at Board Retailers Association for your partnership and your friendship. I love hanging out with you guys at all the shows, and I love working with you guys and helping retailers.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. Thank you for your expertise. We look forward to working with you and curating a few learning labs at the Surf Expo coming up in January.
Excellent. All right, everybody, have a great day. And again, reach out if you have any questions, and we'll talk again soon.